One of the purposes of science fiction is not to predict the future, but to prevent it. But lately, that seems like a lesson some people are incapable of learning. We finally reached the turning point in the rebellion, the Ghorman Massacre. The slow build up to this point has been a masterclass in storytelling, each step carefully planned, mostly successfully executed. We've been nudged along since the first episode, and by the time we finally get to the looming massacre, you need a lightsaber to cut the tension. Now, there is a major retcon happening here. Canonically, the Ghorman Massacre referred to the event where Tarkin landed his ship on protesters. In Andor, this was renamed the Tarkin Massacre, but it occurs at the same time, 19 years before the Battle of Yavin. What we witness in this episode is now the new Ghorman Massacre. Normally, I wouldn't like that kind of change because it seems pointless, but it's so well done that I genuinely can't complain. And from a narrative standpoint, the new version makes more sense. There's more drama and horror in watching people get gunned down one by one than a ship crushing all of them at once. Right from the start of the episode, you can feel the tension. Cassian notices that the Imperials are removing all the barriers they just put up. That really doesn't make any sense until he thinks about it, and immediately contacts Will, who got lucky that night. Spoiler, they do make it out of this, but he really is tempting fate. Cassian warns Will that it's a trap. The situation in the plaza, not the girl, but technically both are true. The Empire wants to lure people into the plaza and then cut them off, trapping them there for who knows what. Now, I've mentioned several times that the show is unusually current, mimicking events that look like they could have been pulled right out of today's headlines, and this episode is no exception. When it aired, that wasn't necessarily the case, but as of the making of this video, June 7, 2025, this looks like shades of LA. It doesn't take long for the plot to start moving. Dedra finds out about the mining equipment the Empire started dropping on the planet. She's less bothered by what that means, the destruction of the planet, than that she was kept out of the loop and isn't really in power. The main storyline for the episode is the massacre, but I think the underlying storylines are what the massacre reveals about the three Imperial operatives we follow, Dedra, Kaido, and Cyril. With Dedra, it's all about her position and recognition. She takes anything that undermines them personally. Oddly enough, once Disney got a hold of Star Wars, they spent so much time trying to be inclusive that they retconned an element that would have worked great for Dedra's storyline, the Empire's, and particularly the Emperor's, sexism. Had they left that in, Dedra's obsession with recognition would have had more impact, not that it was badly done. Anyway, Partagas tells her to ignore the mining equipment because they're moving forward with the initial plan to basically eradicate the Ghorman people. Following that plan, Captain Kaido orders the Imperial building to be barricaded and calls in all Imperial employees, including Cyril. While Cyril's on his way to the building, the Ghorman front decides that they're going to protest in the plaza. However, some of them plan for a violent resistance. But when Enza makes it to the plaza, her father Rylans realizes what's happening and tries to warn her that it's a trap. They'll be slaughtered. But she doesn't really believe him, so he runs off to warn the others and bumps right into Cyril. I love this scene because it's the first time Cyril finally realizes he's been played. Rylans confronts him about betraying the Ghorman front, asking how Cyril can live with himself. But all Cyril can manage is repeating his talking points about finding outside agitators. Like I said before, this is so dead on to what's happening today that I'm tempted to say the writers could see the future. It genuinely never occurred to Cyril that the Empire could have ulterior motives, even as he's working with them using ulterior motives. That's the kind of naivete of a true believer. But fortunately for Cyril, he's not so indoctrinated that he ignores the evidence right in front of his face. Instead, it pisses him off. He pushes Rylans away and heads to Dedra, but when he gets to the building, he gets tucked away into a secure room full of KX droids. Meanwhile, Kaido sets things into motion. He orders the very green troops out into the crowd and then closes all the exits to the plaza. The key element with Kaido is that he doesn't care about the troops and doesn't try to hide it. From the moment he arrived, he's looked forward to the massacre, and that probably includes watching his own men die. He is a man of chaos, and he's perfect for authoritarian states because they need men like Kaido. It takes his kind of calculated, controlled depravity for that system to work. As things ratchet up, Cassian decides to hang around and contacts Will, who's come along with the Ghorman front into the plaza. The protesters get louder, shout at the troops, and then we get one of the most powerful moments in the show, and arguably the entirety of Star Wars. One of the rebels starts singing the Ghorman anthem, and one by one, voices join in until the entire plaza sings this song. The sound design and staging on this is spectacular because it really sounds like a crowd catching onto what's happening, and it's not uniform. You get these pockets starting to sing at different points until it's the whole plaza. And they did this on set. Some of it was added in later, but a good chunk of it was the live performance, and it is powerful. I can't deny that one of the reasons this had such an impact on me is because I grew up hearing and singing the songs from the civil rights movement. The song reminded me of that, and also what followed singing those songs, the violence and cruelty inflicted on the people fighting for their rights and their obvious just cause. That presents a problem because it's hard to justify, to reasonable people, attacking a crowd of singing protesters. I say to reasonable people because unreasonable people can always convince themselves that atrocities are justified. So, what to do? Well, the easiest solution for the Empire is to stage a conflict by, say, trapping people in the plaza, and then inciting violence by goading the protesters into targeting Imperial troops, and then killing one of their own men, but making it look like the Ghormans did it. Now, while this goes down, Cyril confronts Dedra. Well, confronts isn't the right word. He chokes the shit out of her. He demands to know what this was all really about, so she tells him about the Kalkite and the long-term plan. This shatters Cyril and Dedra. There was something there, not just trust, but a hint of actual affection, and it gets broken. And there's an irony to it because Dedra does to Cyril what she doesn't want done to her by her superiors. She used him and then tries to gaslight him over it, but it's too late. Everything Cyril thought he was fighting for just imploded in his face, so he leaves, walking right into the massacre. Kaido orders the troops to move into the crowd, and the crowd throws rocks at them. Partagas tells Dedra to proceed, so Kaido gives the order. One of the Imperials outside the plaza snipes one of the troops, and this sets off a shooting spree. The troops target the crowd, and the Ghormans with the weapons fight back, and all hell breaks loose. I have to commend the show for staying with the massacre. It'd be easier to show a few people getting killed, bring out the droids, and move on, but they stay with it for a while. There's no dodging what's happening, no justifying the Empire's actions, no sanitizing the violence so that people who support this kind of thing can feel better about themselves. It is a massacre, and we have to watch the senseless brutality and cruelty with no respite. And there's no heroism either. It's not romanticized. This isn't a mythic retelling of noble sacrifices. It is pure slaughter shown in all its ugliness. In the middle of the chaos, Cassian tells Will to find him so they can leave, but right as Cassian gets ready to go, he gets a clear shot of Dedra. Figuring, why not, he makes his move, only to get tackled by Cyril. And even in the midst of horror, this moment is hilarious, because Cyril is like,
"At last we meet for the first time for the last time."
and Cassian is like,
"Who in the blue hell are you?"
He doesn't know who Cyril is. Cyril spent years obsessed with Cassian, and Cassian has no clue this man even exists. And the fight is crazy because Cyril initially has the upper hand by catching Cassian off guard, but Cassian can actually fight, so he just whoops Cyril's ass until a bomb goes off separating them. Cyril grabs a blaster and has Cassian cornered, but he hesitates to pull the trigger. He's still shocked over being played. And in that moment, Rylance tags him in the head. And so ends Cyril Karn, puppet of the Empire. Eventually, Cassian meets with Will and they make it out, but they get followed by one of the KX droids. However, the dude who killed Cinta comes in for the save, driving the vehicle into the droid. This is how Cassian and his team get their hands on K2. Will decides to go and find his lady friend, while Cassian takes the droid. As he drives away, he hears a radio plea sent by the Ghorman front, begging for help. But no help will come. They will be slaughtered, and the Empire will treat this as a great achievement, a fulfilling of their promises to their supporters, and a demonstration of their power. If that sounds familiar, well, that's because this is what authoritarianism and fascism look like. And make no mistake, when these things happen, there are always people who cheer them on. People like Cyril's mother, for instance, who weeps as she watches the news feed, either because Dedra told her what happened to Cyril, or because she realizes he's probably dead. One thing is clear, she believes the Empire's spin. That leads into the next episode, which will have the new catalyst for jumpstarting the rebellion. Again, normally I wouldn't like these kinds of retcons, but it is so well done, I can't complain. Like I mentioned before, what stood out to me in the episode were the story arcs of the Empire characters. We get to see 3 different versions of true believers in the Empire: Kaido, Dedra, and Cyril. When people wonder how authoritarian and fascist states operate, these 3 are perfect examples of the types of people who make that whole system work. Kaido may not actually be a true believer. He may not actually agree with the Empire's positions, at least not in full, but he is absolutely a sadist, the type of person who thrives in an authoritarian system because he can act on his darkest impulses. There's a moment in the middle of the massacre where the camera focuses on him, and he's just smirking. He's enjoying the violence. And it likely doesn't matter to him that his own men are getting killed. It doesn't matter who dies, only that someone dies, that someone suffers, and that he's in control of that suffering. Like I've said in many of my reviews, the show is shockingly current, and a character like Kaido is no exception. I can think of several people in the current administration who fit his profile, including the dear leader himself. Then you get someone like Dedra, who's been indoctrinated into the Empire's ideology from childhood. She is a true believer. She buys into it 100% and doesn't question any of it. Her issue isn't the ideology, it's her place within the hierarchy. She wants more power and prestige, and as long as she gets it, she'll go along with everything she's asked to do. But even if she doesn't get the power and prestige, her questioning doesn't change her loyalty. In fact, it's the opposite. It only strengthens her loyalty because she thinks she's the best person for the job. What complicates things is Cyril. It started as a game, as a way to control Cyril, but I think she eventually did have real feelings for him. She's broken by his death. She can barely pull herself together, but, and this is key, at no point does she question the plan to annihilate the Ghormans. She doesn't back out. She is all in, even during the massacre. She is, however, annoyed that she's not really in control. She thinks she has power when she really doesn't, and having that thrown in her face shatters her ego. Cyril's death just makes it worse. And again, this incidentally matches current events, where a certain billionaire got his wake-up call. But unlike Tony Stark, Dedra doesn't turn on her masters because she is a true believer. She is loyal to the Empire, even after Cyril's death. She just wants a little power to go with it. But I think the most interesting character from the Empire is Cyril, because unlike Dedra, while he is a true believer, he's not wrapped up in the ideology. He's got more personal motivations, in this case, his desire to catch Cassian Andor. That drive makes him more aware of the idiosyncrasies of the Empire. Not enough to rebel against them, but enough to realize something's not right. However, his obsession with Cassian blinds him to the reality of what's going on. You think that after he got screwed and lost his job over hunting Cassian, that he'd be more suspicious of the Empire, but he's not. He wants to catch Cassian so much that Dedra easily weaponizes that against him. His personality quirks, probably due to his overbearing mother, made him even more susceptible to that manipulation, so that when he starts to realize things are off, like when the Empire raids his office looking for bugs they should know are there because they're trying to catch the rebellion who's likely spying on him, he writes this off when he should have asked more questions. His saving grace, for lack of a better term, is that he's too smart for that to always work. Eventually, he will catch on, and when he does, it won't be pretty. And it wasn't. If he had any feelings for Dedra, he lost those the moment he realized she played him. His entire world is shattered when he finds out that the Empire wants to kill the Ghorman people because he can see they're not actually a threat. Or really, he doesn't perceive them as a threat. He's been around them, so he knows they're one of the good ones. When Rylance confronts Cyril, Cyril is being honest when he says he meant the Ghorman no harm. He genuinely didn't want to do anything to them. But the rest of the rebellion and people like Cassian, well, they're bad hombres. They deserve to die. It also genuinely never crossed his mind that the Empire would resort to such extreme measures, at least not for the Ghorman people. Whether that's because Cyril deluded himself or because he's actually oblivious to the obvious is up for grabs. It's probably a combination of both. This is why he's in such a daze after confronting Dedra. Everything he's done has been a lie, and that forces him to deal with the reality that the Empire itself may be built on a lie, that maybe the rebels have a point. Seeing Cassian gives him a way to act out his frustration, but once he gets the upper hand, he hesitates instead of pulling the trigger. Would he have pulled it eventually? Probably. But either way, now he has doubts. He can't trust the Empire anymore. He knows what they are. Would that make him join the rebellion? Probably not. Kyle Soller, the actor who played him, said as much in an interview. Cyril probably would have found a quiet place away from the Empire and the rebellion and stayed out of it. That's the impact of a wake-up call on a true believer who loses his faith, so to speak. He may not join the other side, but he is absolutely done with his own. It would have been interesting, though, to see how Cyril would manage following the Ghorman Massacre, but I can understand how that doesn't really fit into the story for the show. Like I said before, this is a masterclass in storytelling. This is how you write compelling, dynamic, multifaceted characters. This is not a simple good guy, bad guy story. It's deeper than that, even though one side is clearly in the right and the other is clearly in the wrong. This is about how an authoritarian and fascist system rises, what it does to people, and why people fight back. It's not clean, and it's not pretty. Rebellions rarely are. And I love that the story doesn't sanitize it. We get to see the ugly reality and horror that comes with it. The hope is that maybe by seeing a fictional story about authoritarianism and fascism, we can avoid making them a reality. Unfortunately, as current events prove, some people are incapable of learning that lesson. So I guess we're going to have to do this the hard way. Again. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.